Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. This is my video about Resident Evil 4. I want to tell you why I love Resident Evil 4 so much. It is one of my favourite games of all time, but also why I'm looking forward to the remake. Cannot wait till next Friday. I don't actually know, to be honest, if I'm going to be able to afford to buy it next Friday. That's another matter. If I could, I'd play it on the channel, but I just don't think I'm going to be able to afford it, unfortunately. You know, cost of living hits everybody, doesn't it? And it's not exactly a successful channel, this one, so you can't exactly use the profits of this channel to buy games. But anyway, I digress. Whenever I get to play this game, I can't wait. I have real love for Resident Evil 4. I owned it almost immediately it came out on the GameCube. I only had a GameCube for a couple of years, but I had one when Resident Evil 4 came out, and just played it and couldn't believe the difference between that and the first three Resident Evil games, which I also loved very much. I since now own it on GameCube, PS2, PS4, Wii, Switch, PC. First time I ever completed it was on the Wii, which I think is an absolutely amazing version of this game with the nunchuck and the motion controls. It's absolutely fantastic. If you've never played it on the Wii, highly advise that. But what do we say about Resident Evil 4 that hasn't been said already? Myself, I was very scared of the first three Resident Evil games. I was only like younger. I was in my teens, I think, when they came out, and in my early 20s. But I could never finish them. Even then, I had slight tendencies towards a bit of anxiety. Could never finish them. They were too scary for me. I always used to say to people, I can't really play horror games. They were too much for me. Despite Resident Evil 4, the original version we're talking about here, of course, having jumpy moments. I mean, like the regenerators, which are probably one of the scariest things in any Resident Evil game, quite honestly. Well, until the molded came along in Resident Evil 7. The game just was somehow easier to play for a scaredy cat like me. I think it was the action element of it. It was so well done, and it just made it a little bit more bearable. Also, as well, you didn't have as much backtracking to do in these versions. It was more like, you know, plow forwards, action-packed, and kind of probably the games I was playing most at the time were like that too. So it was kind of, it just felt familiar. The game itself was a huge step up from the original Resident Evils as well, and as brilliant as they are, and I still love them all to death, this was just, to me, on a platform high above. So for anyone who's never played Resident Evil 4, what is the plot? You play as Leon S. Kennedy, the rookie cop who's in Resident Evil 2. He's now working for the US president, and the president's daughter Ashley gets kidnapped by a terrorist group and taken to a Spanish village. And you are playing as Leon, and you're sent in to find her and bring her home, and obviously protect her. There's a lot of that going on in this game. I think most people see this as the best Resident Evil game. I certainly do. That doesn't say that it hasn't got its problems. Let's talk about a few of the pros and cons. I think the pros for this game were that it was a huge step up graphically in terms of like the other Resident Evil games. Obviously, it was on a more powerful console. It was the next generation of Resident Evil games. And also, they changed the viewpoint as well, which made the aiming and stuff like that a lot easier. No tank controls, you know, we were back. Even though sometimes it can be a bit like stiff movement wise, the first few games with the tank controls, they were of a time, but they were starting to get a bit dated at that point. And, you know, that was definitely a pro. This is a more action-based game rather than puzzles, which means there's not as much backtracking. You're constantly kind of moving forwards. Okay, you do go through a couple of areas multiple times, but it's not like, you know, find a crank, retrieve a crank, take it back to the other side of a map to use it, then come back to a box and put it away, you know, that sort of thing. It doesn't really have so many elements like that. And also, one thing, I made a list of a few pros. One thing I did forget was the little mini game you have when you're arranging your stash in your case, in your attaché case, is awesome. It's kind of like a little Tetris game all of its own. Can get frustrating when your case gets filled up, but that was another little pro as well. The gun play in this is very satisfying. The guns are awesome, especially for me, my favourite gun, the Red 9, absolutely amazing with its laser sight and everything. And the guns feel really powerful when you're shooting them, which is awesome. The enemies are quick, sometimes pretty smart too. I mean, sometimes they can be dumb. Of course, don't get me wrong, this is a video game after all. Not everybody's going to be as smart as a human being, but the enemies in this game will duck and try and dodge your bullets. So yeah, they are pretty formidable. The story, people could count this as a con. I think it's a pro. It's a crazy story. The characters are pretty crazy too. Little Salazar, who's in the castle, particularly, is a fun. There's a lot of fun one-liners zinging about between Leon and Salazar, and that's fun. It just makes it fun. The game itself is fun. That is another pro. It's a fun game. The amount of times I've completed this game now, and I could just pick it up and do it again, quite honestly. When I got it on the Switch fairly recently, a couple of years ago, immediately played it through till I finished it. First time I'd ever played it on a tiny little screen. Absolutely awesome. And the final pro I'm going to talk about is the extras. There are a lot of extras. Once you finish the game, you get to play games like Mercenaries, Assignment Ada. I think I want to talk about Mercenaries, so I'll go back to Mercenaries. It's like an arcade-style mini-game. You get lots of enemies. You get time limits and scores for killing enemies and stuff. You can unlock things as well. It's everyone knows about Mercenaries, I'm pretty sure. First appeared in Resident Evil 3, but they really honed it in Resident Evil 4. And I think that's where it took on a life of its own. Assignment Ada is a short scenario where you're controlling Ada and you've got to collect Plaga samples, and Separate Ways, which is a 5-chapter scenario which kind of just plays through what Ada does during the main game when you see her from time to time. She can also go and visit the merchant, and this wasn't actually present in the GameCube version. It started on PS2, but all the recent versions have this in, and these are just extras for after you finish the game itself, which is a long campaign. So you're getting quite a lot of bang for your buck here, as they say. A couple of cons, obviously, there are always going to be a few. Number one, probably the one thing that annoys most people about this game, Ashley. Yeah, she can be irritating. The constant crying of Leon can grate quite a lot. Even though there are escort missions, which I don't particularly like in games, Ashley's quite clever in that, in the sense that she will let you know when she's in trouble. Yes, she can get in the way sometimes, which is irritating. She can also be boosted into areas to retrieve items, such as the Magnum, and also unlock areas that you need to get through. So it's not just like you've got to look after her and everything. You know, you've got to manage her health and stuff, and make sure you don't accidentally stab her like Mary Kish did when I watched Resident Knievel playthrough. If you haven't seen Resident Knievel before, where they play all the Resident Evil games, you should check that out on here. It's great fun, and yeah, Mary accidentally stabbed her with a knife and killed her. So you've got to be careful of things like that. Quick time events. You can either love them or hate them. I think when the game came out, they were revolutionary. It was Shenmue, I think, started off mostly a lot of the quick time events, but they started popping up in nearly every game. And I guess it was a way to make players feel more part of the character and more danger when you're running away from a huge boulder and stuff. But I don't think QTEs have aged particularly well. So yeah, I do believe they've scrapped them from the remake, as far as I know. So which will be a good thing. But they're not great, are they, QTEs? I don't think a lot of people like them. I certainly don't. And some sections of the game, I think they lean a little bit too hard on the action near the end. There's a section in the end where you're fighting a load of like armor-clad Ganados. And it felt more like a war game, like Call of Duty or something, I think, in certain sections they went a bit over the top with it. I'm not a massive fan of the Krauser boss fight either, but, that's just something you have to go through near the end of the game. It's fairly irritating, but it's not enough to spoil a great game. So you might think, because I love this game so much, do I believe that it needs a remake? When they first announced it, I thought not. I could see why they remade 1, 2 and 3, because obviously they were PlayStation 1 games. They weren't best graphically and everything. RE4 still looks great to this day. So I wasn't really on board with it. But the way they handled the modern remakes, particularly number 2, I'm all in now on this. I feel like they might strip away I've heard they have actually stripped away some of the annoying parts that came from the old games. But also, they're staying true to it, but they're adding new things. There'll probably be a lot more over-the-top stuff as well, like the violence maybe, and the scares. It's probably going to be a lot scarier. And yeah, I'm all in now. I'm all in. I wasn't at the beginning, I must say. I think there's room to have your favourite games remade. I mean, I've completed the original Resident Evil 2 since I've completed the remake. So it's not like you can't go back and play the old classics. And I'm sure I'm going to play Resident Evil 4 again in its original form at some point. So I'm definitely all in. I can't wait to see what they do with this. And now we've had a glimpse of it. And I can safely say that they're doing a great job of it. Because I played the excellent, if a little bit short, Chainsaw demo. I was a bit surprised. It only took me like 20 minutes to finish. And I thought I was going quite slow on it too. Got to say though, I was very impressed. And it was a lot scarier than the first one. And now I've played now I'm in the zone. I mean, I hadn't completed a Resident Evil game till I completed 4, and now I've completed every single one of them, except for like a few of the PS2 ones that came out, like Outbreak and stuff. I haven't played any of those, but the main games in the series and like the numbered versions, and also Code Veronica X and stuff, I've completed all of those. Yeah, so I feel like this never used to be that scary for me, except for when the regenerators were around. But now, playing that demo, it was very creepy. I'm sure you guys, if you're into this, have already played it by now. You have to let me know what you thought in the comments below and what you're thinking about how the remake's going in general. But what I like is that they've adapted the story a little, which I guess is inevitable with a remake, but it still retains a lot of the amazing features that were in the first one. Some of the dialogue's still the same, some of the enemies, or most of the enemies really, and the set pieces, of course, when you end up in the village. I mean, as I was approaching it, you could just tell we were heading towards the village. I was just saying out loud, this is the village, this is going to be it, and as soon as I walked in, it all felt familiar, even though it felt new, if that makes sense. And the most important thing, of course, is they kept Leon's classic line, where's everybody going, bingo. If they'd got rid of that, I think fans would have revolted. So for now, they look like they're very much on track, and I just can't wait. So to end this video, I just thought I'd read off 10 facts that you may or may not know about the original Resident Evil 4. Some things I came across while I was researching the video, and I thought they were fun facts. So here we go. Firstly, Ashley Graham, voice actress. Carolyn Lawrence. She also voices Sandy Cheeks from SpongeBob. So if you're a SpongeBob fan, I'm sure you know who that is. I'm flashing the picture up on the screen. Sandy the squirrel, one of SpongeBob's best mates. And funny enough, Leon also did another character. He did a character within Resident Evil 4 though. He also voiced the Merchant, which I was quite surprised to learn that, to be honest. But Leon and the Merchant are voiced by Paul Mercier. Resident Evil 4 was originally planned for development on PlayStation 2. Production began in 1999, but console was too limited, so they eventually settled on the GameCube. RE4 did later release on PS2 in October 2005, despite Shinji Mikami saying that he would cut off his own head, I believe was the quote, if it ever released on PlayStation 2. So, as far as I know, he's still got his head, so he obviously didn't follow through on that one. Okay, the next fact. The AI difficulty increases or decreases as you play the game, depending on how well you're playing. Apparently there is a hidden slider within the code that judges how you're playing the game and adjusts enemies accordingly, which is, what a fantastic feature. The handgun Matilda, featured in the game, is named after the character of the same name played by Natalie Portman in the 1994 film Leon the Professional. One of my favourite films of all time. Absolutely awesome film, and I never knew that fact. I always wondered why it was called Matilda. Never knew. Never would have suspected, to be honest with you. Okay, prior to facing Del Lago, if you shoot the lake in the right spot before you get into the boat, you're treated to a nice hidden death animation scene. I'm not going to spoil anything for you. You do get a trophy for that too if you're playing on PlayStation and stuff, and probably an achievement on Xbox as well. So give it a try, and don't blame me if you soil your underpants. In the GameCube release, during a segment where you play as Ashley, it's possible to use Leon's trademark suplex move on the Zealots. Now, that was a section where you were controlling Ashley and you didn't appear to have any attacks, really, apart from throwing lamps at people. But on the original GameCube, you could do the suplex move if you stunned them first. But apparently it was removed from later ports of the game. Capcom decided to patch it out. When Leon and Luis take on the Horde of Ganados in the cabin during Chapter 2-2, it's possible to make Luis shoot and kill Leon by repeatedly shooting him. Yeah, I've never tried this, so I can't confirm. I did the Del Lago one, I've done that before, but I can't confirm if this is true or not. But apparently it is, that if you decide to just shoot Luis instead, he will end up killing you. I don't know if you get a trophy for that. I actually haven't got a clue, but next time I play the game, for sure, at least at one time, as long as I've saved it, I'm going to give that a whirl. Hideki Kamiya, I hope I'm saying that right, was Capcom's original choice to make Resident Evil 4. The game he created was deemed too action-packed even for this series, so he left the project, took the game with him, and turned it into Devil May Cry. And he changed a few of the characters, obviously, but people have often said that the character of Dante looks a lot like Leon, and that's the reason why. Basically, they just changed his hair colour, pretty much, and he became Dante, and Devil May Cry was born. So there you go, Resident Evil, such a great game series, and yeah, it spawned another one. So we can all be thankful for that. It was the last Resident Evil entry directed by series creator Shinji Mikami. Yeah, what a legend. I mean, he went on to do Evil Within 2 after that, but this was the last Resident Evil game he was attached to. Apparently, he was going to be attached to Resident Evil 5, but he wasn't very impressed with the game, and probably a lot of people felt the same way too. And the final fact, Resident Evil 4 is one of the most ported games of all time, with a staggering 12 ports from the original version on GameCube to a VR version, and even a port to a console called the Zeebo, which I must admit I'd never heard of until I did this article. But apparently Skyrim has it beaten though, having been released 17 times across 10 platforms. And I own Skyrim on about 8 platforms, so I can testify to that one too. So since I started working on this video, some of the magazine sites have been dropping their reviews. So I just thought I'd say that scores are overwhelmingly high, including perfect scores from the likes of GameSpot, IGN, Giant Bomb, Push Square, The Guardian, Washington Post, and quite a few more. I didn't want to list too many people on here, but all perfect scores. Most of them were 10 out of 10s. I think Giant Bomb was a 5 out of 5. Yeah, amazing, amazing. So it just looks absolutely awesome. So what's left to say, really? Just roll on March 24th. And maybe, just maybe, I may have a new favourite Resident Evil game when March the 24th comes around, if I get to play it on release day, which I'm still hoping I do. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any comments about Resident Evil 4 Original or what your thoughts are on the remake, let me know in the comments below. Please do let me know if you played the demo as well. If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to throw a subscription and a like to the video. And if you enjoyed the video, please like it too. That would be great. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Take care. See you on my next video. Bye for now. Next video.